and current efforts at accountability. During the war, the Sri Lankan security forces committed thousands of human rights violations against unarmed colonists suspected of being supporters or members of the Tigers, including arbitrary detention, torture, extrajudicial execution, and enforced disappearances. In particular, enforced disappearances appear to be used for two purposes. It facilitated torture without accountability, and it concealed the killing of prisoners. It should also be noted that over the years, the Tigers have been responsible for scores of grave human rights abuses, including the indiscriminate and deliberate killing of civilians, torture and execution of prisoners, abductions for ransom, and the forcible recruitment and use of child soldiers. Amnesty International has publicly condemned these crimes. A few examples drawn from our public statements. May 26, 1995, 42 Sinhalese civilians killed by the Tigers. February 1, 1996, 80 civilians killed in the central bank bombing by the Tigers. July 16, 1997, 46 Sinhalese and Muslim villagers taken prisoner by the Tigers. Tigers' victims also included Tamil civilians and politicians. I could go on, but I think you get my point. I could give an equally detailed list of human rights violations by the government forces. Now, what's the current situation for achieving accountability for these crimes and other abuses during the war? I'll describe first the Sri Lankan Reconciliation Commission and then the UN panel of experts. The Sri Lankan government established the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission in May of 2010 and said that it would be the vehicle for accountability. We at Amnesty were skeptical of this commission. The fact is, as documented in our report, 20 years of make-believe, Sri Lanka's commissions of inquiry. The Sri Lankan government has repeatedly set up temporary commissions of inquiry in response to international pressure on human rights. These commissions have not produced justice for the victims, but have merely served to deflect pressure. The latest commission is really but the latest in a long line of such bodies. We also found that the Reconciliation Commission didn't have the requisite independence from the government and impartiality to be an effective mechanism for accountability. Amnesty, along with Human Rights Watch and the International Crisis Group, were invited to testify before the Commission, but all three organizations declined to do so, since the Commission was so flawed that we knew it would not provide accountability. Furthermore, unfortunately, as the Commission held hearings and took testimony from witnesses, it proved to be deficient. These deficiencies are detailed in another report Amnesty has issued, entitled, When Will They Get Justice? Failures of Sri Lanka's Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission. Both Amnesty reports are available on our website, and if anyone's interested in reading them, see me afterwards. The Reconciliation Commission issued its final report to President Rajapaksa last November. It was publicly released on December 16th. The report unfortunately proved that our concerns about the Commission's independence and impartiality were well founded. The report did make some valuable recommendations on several issues other than accountability for war crimes. But when it came to the war crimes issue, the Commission showed that, for the most part, it affected the Sri Lankan military's version of events uncritically, and therefore didn't find any accountability for war crimes on the part of the security forces, aside from a couple incidents that it recounted in the report. The Commission acknowledged its inability to determine the facts on some critical issues. For example, who was responsible for shelling hospitals during the final months of the war? The Commission's report demonstrated that an impartial international investigation into these crimes is needed for accountability in Sri Lanka. The UN has taken some steps toward accountability. In June of 2010, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon established a three-member panel of experts in international law to advise him on accountability issues in Sri Lanka. The panel issued its report to Ban Ki-moon in April of last year, and it was made public shortly thereafter. the UN panel found that there were credible allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity having been committed by both the government forces and the Tigers during the war. The panel recommended that the Sri Lankan government set up effective investigations into these allegations, and that the UN also set up an international investigation to ensure that genuine investigations were undertaken by the Sri Lankan government. Ban Ki-moon has said that he doesn't have the authority to establish such an international investigation on his own authority, but he would need the consent of either the Sri Lankan government, which we think he probably will not look at, or authorization by a member body of the UN, such as the Security Council, the General Assembly, or the UN Human Rights Council. None of those bodies has yet provided any such authorization. We are now looking for the UN Human Rights Council at its next session, which starts, by the way, on February 27th in Geneva, to possibly provide the authorization for an international investigation. The last point I'd like to make is, for those who are interested in helping Amnesty in our campaign for human rights in Sri Lanka, including for accountability, what can you do to help? We have petitions at the back of the room. I hope you will sign each of them before you leave tonight. One, not surprisingly, concerns accountability for war crimes. It is not addressed to the Sri Lankan government. It is addressed to the U.S. government, asking the U.S. to publicly support an international investigation. Another petition concerns the disappeared journalist Pradeep Eknologoda, who actually is Sinhalese. We are asking the Sri Lankan government to investigate his disappearance and make the results public. Another petition in the back concerns hundreds of Tamil detainees who are currently being held without charge or trial under the security legislation in Sri Lanka. We think the Sri Lankan government should promptly release all those people or charge them with a recognizable crime and not continue to hold them without charge or trial. Thank you. I'll pass the Sean.
Thank you, Jim. Before we hear from Krishanti, I want to let those of you who are standing in the back know there are 4 open seats right here up front. And I see, I believe, some scattered seats. If there's a scattered seat next to you, would you mind raising your hand so people can? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we do have some front row seats. As much as we love the idea of being standing room only, we do want to make sure you're comfortable. Some seats over here for anyone standing, and again, 3 right up here. Thank you very much, and thank you, Krishanti, for waiting.
Good evening. My name is Krishanti Dharmaraj. I'm a human rights activist, and currently I'm the director of Samasambi Fund, which means Peace on Equal Terms. And we fund cutting-edge institutions and initiatives across South Asia who are trying to help out in armed conflict. I think I want to start my presentation really by saying that there's a lot of activity, especially now, on Sri Lanka. And the work of the international community is not a campaign against Sri Lanka. It is a campaign for Sri Lanka. It is a campaign to recognize that all people in Sri Lanka have human rights. The Vadas, that is the indigenous community that we rarely hear about. The Burghers, who are the descendants of the Europeans. The Muslims, the Tamils, and the Sinhalese. It is for a Sri Lanka that has the right to freedom of religion, which includes Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, or any other religion, or the right not to be religious. It is for a Sri Lanka that recognizes lesbians, gay, bisexual, and transgender people as human beings. It is for a Sri Lanka that recognizes men and boys, and women and girls have fundamental human rights.